Good evening, dear friends. Well, you talk about your cup running over. When I think of this day, this July Sunday, with the great auditorium packed this morning to the last seat, when I saw that great multitude tonight filling that huge tent and standing around, then most of all, how the Lord came between 40 and 50 people saved and joined the church today, and most remarkable with so many remarkable cases. There were several servicemen out here from Tarrant Airfield, some half a dozen. We're having a large number of those boys saved all the time. I consider that the finest missionary work that can be done on the face of the whole earth. Amen. The whole audience was moved this morning. You saw that boy from North Carolina meet that boy from California. One of them's name, the first name was Lee, and the other boy was name was Charles. I forget their family names, but Lee and Charles. Both of them saved, and there California watched for the waters of the Pacific, North Carolina by the waters of the Atlantic, and I called them together there, and I said, now North Carolina and California shake hands. Only place this side of heaven where they could meet. And then it was very beautiful to see one of the boys that just come back from Australia with his beautiful bride, a girl that got over there in Australia, and he married her and brought her back. They both were saved and came in the church. And the whole audience was tremendously moved. Tonight, there were some 25 or 30 to tent, and among those were some very, very remarkable cases. One man I've known for a long, long time. Been out in the world and hard and unmoved and unmovable. But tonight, he said, I give it up, came in and united with the church for baptism. Yeah. Another man, one of the leading contractors of the city of Fort Worth, he and his dear wife came in the church. He to be baptized, she with him. And there were many. The Lord came in mighty power tonight. The service was quiet and deep. Did you notice how deep the spirit of conviction was in that whole crowd? Yeah. I felt it the minute I started to preach. Yeah. I talked of the separation that will take place at the great tribulation hour. And by the way, speaking of that, my friends, my new book is out, and I'm giving a copy of this book free to everybody who sends in as much as $1 more to the seminary. I'll give you the subjects of these sermons if you want to come in, Nathan. The Battle of Armageddon. Everybody's interested in that battle. I answer 5 questions. First, when will it be fought? Second, where will it be fought? Third, what's the issue involved in the battle? And fourth, who are the leaders of the opposing armies? And fifth, what is the outcome? I discuss that from the Old and New Testament. Then another important subject, the one I discussed tonight, why the believer will not go into the tribulation period. I give 5 scriptural arguments supporting that position, that the believer will be delivered out from the tribulation, but the unbeliever will enter into that tribulation period. Then another message in that book is 24 truths set forth in baptism. Now I'm giving that book away free to all, or send as much as $1 to the helping of our seminary. During the last 2 years, we have bought and built together over $600,000 worth of buildings, now around near $700,000. And now everything is ready for the completion of our 7-story building. It's been wholly a work of faith. We started this seminary some 8 years ago without 1 cent, and now we have the properties that you are fully acquainted with. Our big problem now is to furnish these buildings. Last Wednesday night, the Temple Baptist Church voted unanimously and enthusiastically to send us a check for $15,000 as the first payment on the Neely apartments. Those apartments, some 35 or 40, will be used for our married students and their families. Located here in the, what block on West 2nd? 600 block, just below us here, and one of the best built buildings in the city. Building that cost $125,000 to $150,000 to be built now. And so we're very happy that the Temple Baptist Church came to our help, and they did so voluntarily. Thank God for that great church. They put between $75,000 and $100,000 into this great seminary. And others are putting in their money, and we need about $30,000 now for the furnishing of the rooms. All the dormitories are financed. One of them down on West 2nd Street has already been occupied, completed, and they're moved in. and we have 2 or 3 times as many applications as rooms that we can supply. So therefore, these buildings are the gift from heaven. And we praise God from whom all blessings flow, and how that the people have responded. It's been a wholly sincere work of faith. We launched it without a cent in the world, and thus all of our needs have been met. We'll have 1,000 students this year in this seminary. We've already, in all departments, local students and correspondents, reached over 5,000 in the 8 years. So any information you want on this seminary, we'll be glad to give you a free catalog. Just drop us a card, say, please send me the catalog. Remember, we give the highest degrees that can be given in the theological world, and that is by the authority of the federal government. And that's about the highest authority that I know under the stars. Now, I'm going to ask Mr. Brooks Morris to come here and tell us a word concerning a trip that he and I took last week, and he got a new car. And I want him to tell us about that new car. Somebody going to say, well, you're advertising an automobile. Brother, you're absolutely right. We are sure advertising, because when I called up the head of the Dodge Motor Company, and I told them that my friend here, Brooks Morris, needed a car, they says, what kind of car does he want? And I told them, and they said he'd be ready, and so Brooks got up there and drove it back. And we've gotten some half a dozen more cars from the Dodge Motor Company recently. And now don't you be coming in here and phoning me and ask me to help you get a car, because I got all I'm going to get. I'm not going to ask for no more. My good friend Steve Cook over here runs the Dodge Motor Company for Fort Worth and the whole country around here. And I know the Vice President and General Manager, Forrest Akers in Detroit, and I'm quite well acquainted with the General Sales Manager and Vice President of the Dodge Motor Company. That's how we got all these cars. Brooks come in here not long ago and was crying about his car. He had an old car that wouldn't run. He couldn't push it and he couldn't pull it, and so I picked up the telephone, and I told my friend Vanderzee, that's exactly the situation. He said, all right, we'll see that he gets a car. Now then, I want to announce to you, you're going to hear my message I gave last Sunday morning when I finished on the army of 200 million marching from the east to the west. So I'll tell you that so you know whether you want to sit up and hear it. It's a message that will make your hair stand on end. And in that message, I tell how that the Washington government sold the United States out to Joe Staley. Now, some of you are not going to like that. No. I sure told them that last Sunday night in Detroit, didn't I? Yes, and that's exactly what's happened. I don't owe anybody anything on earth except my love, and they owe me nothing except their love. And the time has come for plain talk. My friends, we have come to an impasse. The whole world is now divided into 2 camps. The center one camp is Moscow, and the other is Washington. Well, Uncle Sam is a rich uncle, and he's going around now playing Santa Claus at a cost of $25 to $30 billion American taxpayers. And that's just pocket change, because when you go to feed a lot of hungry poor kinfolks, they'll come back for more. They'll eat the smokehouse empty and then actually eat the smokehouse. And that's what that crowd in Europe are going to do to us before we get through. But it's either that or something else worse. Now then, Uncle Sam has pulled a pretty smart one on Joe Staley this time. Joe and his people over there, I read today where a loaf of bread will cost $10. Think about paying $10 for a loaf of bread. Well, I eat one whole loaf today of salt rising bread myself. And think about me having to give $10 for that loaf of bread. Well, that's what they're having in Russia. Now then, he's got a lot of countries under his heel. So Uncle Sam, a rich uncle, is playing Santa Claus, and he's going around with $25 or $30 billion in his pocketbook, just bulging out. Well, all the poor kin come around, and the neighbors throw it in. And so, therefore, to date, it seems, of the 22 nations they invited to come and sit down at Santa Claus table, 11 have already officially accepted it. The Scandinavian countries and most of the countries of Western Europe. And now then, there's Czechoslovakia and Poland that are waiting for the word from Moscow, and suppose that Moscow doesn't give their consent, which they will not. Then Uncle Sam, by his smokehouse full, why, he'll be able to entice these countries that are starving to come and sit down at Uncle Sam's table where there's enough and to spare. Now, it means, my friends, that we've entered into war with Russia, whether we like it or dislike it. I have here in the paper before me where Dr. Newton has accepted the invitation from Tito from Yugoslavia to go there to that country. Now, my friends, they didn't go at it in the regular way. He's now asking for the State Department to give him permission. Dr. Newton, my friends, went to Russia, and he came back with his blessings on Stalin's crowd, said he gave Stalin the Bible, and said he saw him in person. Incidentally, however, since his crowd was with him, said he didn't see Stalin in person, the dear brother Louis had to come out and renounce and deny that he'd seen Stalin in person. Now, when I grew up on the farm, we called that by downright lying, because when you enter the ministry, it's not lying. It's just a hyperbolical expression of a hyperbolical condition, or some kind of bolical. Well, anyway, he admits now he didn't see him. And Brother Newton is not joining the Ananias Club, but he's roosting next door to it. For instance, he said that President Truman promised him to recall Myron Taylor. President Truman came out next day in an interview with the newspapers and said he did not. Harry Truman is a Baptist, and Louis is a Baptist. Of course, you know we're all kinds of Baptists, 57 varieties. And so one Baptist in the White House calls another Baptist a liar. Well, I wouldn't say liar. He just said ain't so. That's just a nice, polite way. Now then, Brother Newton came back and said that Baptists are in agreement with Moscow. Now then, he's going over there to Yugoslavia. That is, he's been invited by Tito. Now keep in mind that the bloodiest of all these dictators, of the satellites of Joe Stalin, is that fellow called Tito. We had a great patriot with them, a Holovitz, who fought hard, and because he would not bow to Joe Stalin, they trumped up charges and stood Mahalovitz and his patriots in front of the firing squad. I traveled all day and all night. I have no special kind feeling towards Belgrade, because one morning about 6 o'clock a fellow woke me up and told me I didn't have any ticket. I was going on down, wife and I, to Athens. Well, I had to get out and buy another ticket because something was wrong with this ticket, and he just held me up. Well, so I haven't got much use for that bunch of highwaymen and crooks. And so we traveled all day down the Varda River. It's a very beautiful valley. Yugoslavia has between 18 and 20 million people. Now, this fellow Tito is Stalin's right-hand man. And here the president of the Southern Baptist Convention is conniving with him. Now he's going over there to find out what he can find out and come back and tell us that Tito is not as bad as we thought he was. Well, he said the same thing about Brother Joe Stalin. So you Baptists, my friends, not my kind of Baptists, but the Convention Baptists, I told you then, and I tell you now, that Louis Newton has sold you down the river, and you're going to find it out. And now, my friends, here's a magazine called The Protestant, which is not Protestant. It's just a name to cover up what they're doing. It's a magazine that's advocating the principles and practices of Joe Stalin. And now Louis Newton is one of the editors of that communist magazine. I'm not going to say anything about it tonight, but I am going to say something about it at a later time, and you can put it down. Now, if you want all this, gets in the fundamentalists. Now remember tonight, after Mr. Brooks Morris gets through, you will hear that sermon on the 200 million marching from the east to the west. And you're going to hear some things in that sermon that you're not going to agree with. I want to tell you that in advance. Now, Mr. Brooks Morris has been with me for a quarter of a century, and he and I agreed not to make it any longer. We passed the quarter of a century mark a long time ago. And think about a choir director and a preacher being together, especially me, and never having a cross word between us. That's a great tribute to Brooks Morris and to his patience and endurance. And I don't know whether he brought his violin here tonight or not. He's up here. I want you to play because we came through Kentucky. I just got a request, want you to play Old Kentucky Home. I told him to do it. Now you can do it by the time you get about halfway through and rest your crowd. Now I've asked Mr. Morris to come in and tell about that trip up yonder. There's some things I do not want him to tell. But he and I went together, we went on the train together, and on the plane, some bumps together on the plane, said, how far will this thing go? And